For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On a scorching morning in March 1996, 29-year-old Wesley Parker and his guide, Aaron Campbell, set out into the vast Queensland Outback near Longreach. The wildlife documentary filmmaker and his experienced bushman companion were pursuing their passion, capturing Australia's rarest creatures on film. They never returned. Despite one of the largest aerial searches in Queensland's history, only their abandoned vehicle remained, its filming equipment scattered like breadcrumbs in a labyrinth of red earth and spinifex grass. For 23 years, their families lived with crushing uncertainty, while the unforgiving Outback kept its secrets buried in silence. Then, in 2019, as a merciless drought gripped the land, the parched earth finally surrendered its dark truth. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Wesley Parker and Aaron Campbell, two men who ventured into the wilderness to document nature's wonders, only to uncover something far more sinister. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. In the vast expanse of the Queensland Outback, where the red earth meets an endless sky, Wesley Parker's passion for wildlife documentation would lead him down a path from which he would never return. On a scorching morning in March 1996, Parker, a 29-year-old filmmaker from Brisbane, embarked on what should have been a routine documentary expedition near Longreach, accompanied by veteran bushman Aaron Campbell. Wesley had built his reputation capturing the intimate moments of Australia's most elusive creatures, his lens bringing viewers face-to-face with the continent's remarkable wildlife. His partner for this journey, 34-year-old Aaron Campbell, was known throughout the region as a man who could read the land like others read books, his tracking skills legendary among the bush community. Their mission was ambitious but straightforward: document the nocturnal habits of several rare native species, including the endangered bilby and the elusive rock wallaby. The pair had meticulously planned their 3-week expedition, marking out remote locations where these creatures had been spotted by local rangers. The last known contact with Wesley and Aaron came through a satellite phone call to base camp on March 15th. Wesley's voice crackled through the static, expressing excitement about footage they'd captured of what he described as unusual animal behavior near an isolated waterhole. That call, logged at 7:42 p.m., would be their final communication with the outside world. When they failed to check in the following evening, no immediate alarm was raised. Both men were experienced in extended stays in the wilderness, and communication blackouts were not uncommon in the remote reaches of the Outback. But as 3 days stretched into 5 with no word, concern began to mount among their support team. On March 21st, a routine supply flight spotted their vehicle, a white Toyota Land Cruiser, parked at an odd angle near a dried creek bed. The discovery triggered an immediate response from local authorities. Senior Constable Sarah Kelly, first on the scene, found the vehicle unlocked, its contents painting a disturbing picture. Expensive camera equipment lay scattered across the back seat, some pieces still in their protective cases, others strewn about as if hastily abandoned. A half-empty water bottle sat in the cup holder, its contents still cool enough to suggest recent human presence. The search operation expanded rapidly. Helicopter crews swept the harsh terrain while ground teams battled through the unforgiving landscape. Indigenous trackers, renowned for their ability to read the subtlest signs in the earth, found footprints leading away from the vehicle in multiple directions, but the trails disappeared into the rocky ground within 50 meters. As the first week drew to a close, the search had covered more than 200 square kilometers without finding a single definitive clue to the men's whereabouts. Their provisions, if they had them, would have run out. The Outback's merciless summer heat would have pushed human endurance beyond its limits. The disappearance dominated local news, with theories ranging from misadventure to foul play. Wesley's sister, appearing on national television, spoke of her brother's methodical nature, how unlikely it would be for him to wander off unprepared. Aaron's wife emphasized her husband's bushcraft skills, stating firmly that he would have found his way back if physically able. Yet as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The search scaled back, though never officially terminated. The Land Cruiser, now impounded at the Longreach police station, stood as a silent witness to whatever tragedy had befallen its occupants. Their families were left with questions that would haunt them for decades. What had Wesley and Aaron discovered in those remote reaches of the Outback? What unusual animal behavior had caught Wesley's attention in those final hours? And most importantly, what force or circumstance had proven powerful enough to overcome two of the most capable outdoorsmen in Queensland? The answers would remain hidden in the harsh landscape for 23 years, buried beneath the scorching sun and shifting sands of the Outback, waiting for a drought to reveal their grim fate. The initial investigation into Wesley Parker and Aaron Campbell's disappearance fell to Senior Constable Sarah Kelly, a veteran of the Queensland Police with 15 years of experience in remote area cases. From the moment she first examined the abandoned Land Cruiser, Kelly sensed this case would be different from typical Outback mishaps. The vehicle itself became the first focal point of the investigation. Despite the scattered equipment inside, the Land Cruiser was mechanically sound, with half a tank of fuel and no signs of breakdown or accident. Kelly's team documented every item: 3 high-end cameras, a drone with spare batteries, camping equipment suitable for a 3-week expedition, and enough water containers to sustain 2 men for 10 days. Most telling was Wesley's journal, found in the glove compartment, with entries stopping abruptly on March 15th. Forensic examination of the vehicle revealed multiple sets of fingerprints beyond those of Wesley and Aaron. While most were eventually matched to members of their support team, 3 distinct prints remained unidentified. Soil samples taken from the wheel wells suggested the vehicle had visited locations not included in their documented itinerary. Kelly interviewed the pilot who had last refueled their vehicle at a remote station 3 days before their disappearance. The pilot recalled Wesley's enthusiasm about filming some unusual nocturnal activity, but also mentioned a tense conversation between Aaron and an unidentified man at the station. When pressed for details, the pilot could only describe the man as older, weather-beaten, and driving a red utility vehicle. The aerial search operations, while extensive, were hampered by the terrain's complexity. The region's landscape was a maze of dry creek beds, rocky outcrops, and dense scrubland. Helicopter crews logged over 200 flight hours, methodically gridding the search area, while ground teams battled heat exhaustion and treacherous terrain. Dr. James Foster, brought in to consult on wildlife behavior patterns, noted that the area where the vehicle was found fell outside known territories of the species Wesley had planned to document. This discrepancy raised questions about what had drawn the men to this particular location. As the investigation progressed, Kelly developed 2 primary theories. The first suggested an accident scenario. The men had spotted something of interest, ventured out on foot, and become disoriented in the harsh terrain. The second, darker theory pointed to foul play, supported by the scattered equipment and those unidentified fingerprints. The weather conditions during the critical period complicated both scenarios. Temperatures had soared above 40 degrees Celsius, making survival without proper supplies nearly impossible. Yet the lack of distress signals or attempts to reach civilization puzzled investigators. Both men carried personal locator beacons, neither of which had been activated. Local property owners were interviewed, their land searched, but most reported no unusual activity. One station hand mentioned hearing a vehicle late on the night of March 15th, but the sound was common enough in the area to have warranted no special attention at the time. Kelly's team analyzed Wesley's recovered footage, finding nothing unusual until the final recordings. The last segment, timestamped 6:30 p.m. on March 15th, showed a distant figure moving among the rocks, but the image was too grainy for identification. The camera's position suggested it had been hastily hidden rather than dropped. As the first month of investigation drew to a close, the evidence painted a frustrating picture. Every answer seemed to spawn new questions. The men had vanished in an area they shouldn't have been, pursuing footage of animals that shouldn't have been there, and their last known movements defied logical explanation. Kelly kept the case file active, convinced that the scattered equipment and unidentified fingerprints pointed to something more sinister than a simple mishap in the Outback. But without bodies, without witnesses, and without a clear motive, the investigation gradually lost momentum. The case would sit in the active files, a constant reminder of the Outback's capacity to keep its secrets, until drought conditions 23 years later would finally reveal the terrible truth about Wesley and Aaron's fate. As the seasons changed and the red dust of the Outback settled, the disappearance of Wesley Parker and Aaron Campbell gradually faded from headlines but never from memory. The case file, thick with witness statements and search reports, remained on Senior Constable Kelly's desk, its answers stubbornly elusive. The first anniversary of their disappearance brought renewed media attention. Wesley's family organized a memorial service in Brisbane, where colleagues shared stories of his dedication to wildlife conservation. Aaron's wife, refusing to accept widow status, continued to maintain their home in Longreach, convinced that somehow, somewhere, her husband would find his way back. Queensland police conducted annual reviews of the case, each time hoping new forensic techniques or witness recollections might shed light on the mystery. The unidentified fingerprints found in the Land Cruiser were regularly run through expanding databases, but matches remained elusive. Satellite imagery from 1996, when finally obtained, proved too grainy to offer useful insights. Local rangers reported occasional rumors: a camera bag found by a hiker, mysterious lights in the search area, unexplained vehicle tracks. Each lead was methodically investigated, but none provided the breakthrough the investigation needed. The original search area, vast and unforgiving, seemed to mock their efforts with its silence. 5 years after the disappearance, a documentary crew attempted to retrace Wesley and Aaron's final known movements. Their work revealed an unexpected detail. Several local stations had changed ownership in the months following the incident. Yet this potentially significant lead dissolved into dead ends and inconclusive interviews. The case haunted the region's consciousness. Bush pilots developed a habit of scanning that particular stretch of terrain during routine flights. Station hands shared stories around campfires, their theories growing more elaborate with each telling. Some spoke of hidden caves, others of illegal operations, but solid evidence remained absent. Dr. James Foster, the wildlife specialist who had assisted in the initial investigation, continued his own quiet research. He noted a curious pattern. Reported sightings of certain rare species had decreased significantly in the area after Wesley and Aaron's disappearance. However, without concrete evidence linking these changes to the case, his observations remained merely interesting footnotes. 10 years passed, then 15. The original investigation team gradually dispersed: retirements, transfers, promotions. Only Kelly maintained regular contact with the families, sharing their frustration as each new year passed without answers. The case became required reading for new officers in the region, a stark reminder that the Outback could still swallow secrets whole. Wesley's camera equipment, held in police storage, gathered dust. The technological advances of the digital age made his gear seem almost primitive, yet forensic teams periodically re-examined it, hoping modern techniques might reveal overlooked clues. The memory cards, corrupted by time and heat, stubbornly guarded whatever final images they might have contained. The 20th anniversary brought a fresh wave of media coverage. National Geographic, where Wesley had published his early work, ran a retrospective of his wildlife photography. His images of nocturnal creatures, captured with remarkable intimacy, served as a bittersweet reminder of his talent and dedication. Aaron's reputation as a bushman had become almost legendary. Other guides spoke of his skills with reverence, often noting that if he couldn't survive out there, something beyond natural hazards must have been involved. His knowledge of the land had been too profound for a simple navigation error. The case remained open but inactive, a persistent mystery in police records. Each new officer assigned to the Longreach station learned about the white Land Cruiser found abandoned in the vastness, about the scattered equipment that seemed to tell half a story, about the final satellite phone call that ended mid-sentence. For 23 years, the truth remained buried in the parched earth of the Queensland Outback. The families held their annual memorials, the police maintained their files, and the local community preserved their theories. But it would take the continent's unrelenting climate, a devastating drought, and receding waters to finally reveal what happened on that March evening in 1996, when two men ventured into the Outback and encountered something far more dangerous than the harsh landscape they knew so well. The summer of 2019 brought Queensland one of its worst droughts in recorded history. Water levels dropped precipitously across the region, transforming waterholes into cracked earth and revealing long-buried secrets. At Bitter Springs, 50 kilometers from where Wesley Parker and Aaron Campbell's vehicle had been found 2 decades earlier, the receding waters exposed what local ranger Lisa Campbell first thought was old farming equipment. The reality proved far more grim. Protruding from the dried mud were human remains, 2 sets of skeletal remains, their discovery sending shockwaves through the community that had long wondered about the fate of the missing men. The position of the bodies, partially concealed beneath old branches and rocks, immediately suggested these were no accidental deaths. Forensic teams descended on the site, carefully excavating layer by layer. Along with the remains, they recovered fragments of clothing consistent with what Wesley and Aaron had been wearing when they disappeared. A badly corroded camera, later confirmed as Wesley's backup equipment, lay nearby. But it was what else they found that transformed a decades-old missing persons case into something far more sinister. Scattered among the remains were dozens of crude animal traps, the kind used by illegal wildlife traffickers. Metal cages, some still containing the skeletal remains of native animals, spoke of a sophisticated poaching operation. Dr. James Foster, called to the scene to examine the traps, identified modifications specifically designed to capture bilbies and rock wallabies, the very species Wesley had been documenting. The drought had not only revealed the bodies, but had also exposed a series of hidden caves in the cliff face above the waterhole. Inside, investigators discovered evidence of a long-running wildlife trafficking operation. Shipping containers modified for animal transport, veterinary supplies, and documentation suggesting international connections. The site had been abandoned years ago, but its purpose was clear. Senior Constable Kelly, now approaching retirement, returned to lead the renewed investigation. The waterhole's location matched coordinates cryptically noted in Wesley's recovered journal, though their significance had remained unclear until now. The site lay on the boundaries of 3 different properties, in an area that had changed hands multiple times since 1996. The forensic examination revealed both men had suffered severe head trauma. Their remains showed signs of being weighted down, intended to remain hidden in the waterhole's depths. The careful positioning suggested the perpetrator knew the area intimately, understanding how to use the landscape to conceal evidence. As news of the discovery spread, long silent witnesses began to come forward. Several recalled unusual vehicle movements in the area during that period in 1996. Others mentioned strange sounds at night, animal cries that seemed out of place. One elderly station hand, speaking on condition of anonymity, described regular deliveries of unusual cargo during the pre-dawn hours. The waterhole, once a sacred site to indigenous peoples, had been known locally as Silence Pool, a name that now carried darker significance. Traditional owners of the land shared stories of avoiding the area in recent decades. Sensing something was wrong but unable to articulate exactly what. Wesley's recovered camera, though severely damaged, contained a memory card that would prove crucial to the investigation. Modern forensic techniques, unavailable when the men first disappeared, might now reveal its contents. The card was carefully extracted and sent to specialized laboratories in Brisbane. The discovery site quickly became the center of an expanding investigation. Police established a permanent presence, documenting every detail as the drought continued to lower water levels and reveal more evidence. Each new finding pointed to a criminal enterprise far larger than anyone had imagined, one that had claimed 2 lives to protect its secrets. For the families of Wesley Parker and Aaron Campbell, the discovery brought a strange mixture of relief and renewed grief. Their loved ones had not simply vanished into the vastness of the Outback. They had stumbled upon something deadly, paying the ultimate price for their discovery. After 23 years of uncertainty, they finally had answers, though the full truth of what happened that March evening was still emerging from the parched earth of Bitter Springs. The discovery at Bitter Springs transformed a cold case into the highest priority investigation in Queensland. Senior Constable Kelly, despite being months from retirement, assembled a specialized task force combining wildlife experts, forensic specialists, and veteran detectives. The magnitude of what they had uncovered demanded nothing less. Ranger Lisa Campbell's expertise proved invaluable as the investigation expanded. Her intimate knowledge of native species behavior patterns helped investigators understand the sophistication of the trafficking operation. The traps found at the site weren't amateur constructions. They showed professional design, specifically tailored to capture some of Australia's most protected species, without causing visible injury that might reduce their black market value. The team established a command center in Longreach, where walls quickly filled with photographs, timelines, and property ownership records spanning 2 decades. They focused particularly on land transfers following Wesley and Aaron's disappearance, revealing a pattern of properties changing hands through a complex web of shell companies and overseas investors. Bruce Mitchell's name began appearing with suspicious frequency in their investigation. The station manager had maintained a low profile in the region for over 30 years, running what appeared to be a conventional cattle operation. Yet financial records showed irregular payments from overseas accounts, far exceeding normal livestock revenues. Kelly's team discovered Mitchell had purchased 3 adjacent properties in the months following the disappearance, including the land surrounding Bitter Springs. His station hands reported rarely seeing him during night hours, though vehicle movements were common. Several mentioned being warned to avoid certain areas of the property, particularly around the waterhole where the bodies were found. Surveillance operations began in earnest. Teams monitored Mitchell's movements, noting his regular visits to remote areas of his property despite his advanced age. Drone footage revealed carefully maintained tracks leading to concealed caves, paths invisible from the air but perfect for moving cargo undetected. The investigation uncovered a pattern of wildlife disappearances that aligned perfectly with shipping manifests from Mitchell's properties. Native species would vanish from certain areas, followed by cargo shipments labeled as agricultural equipment bound for Southeast Asian ports. The operation's sophistication suggested decades of refinement. Dr. James Foster's analysis of the recovered traps provided crucial evidence. The devices matched seizures from wildlife trafficking busts in multiple countries, all traced back to the same manufacturing source. The trafficking operation hadn't just been local. It was part of an international network that had operated with impunity for years. As evidence mounted, Kelly's team maintained absolute secrecy. They knew that any leak could spook their suspects and destroy years of potential evidence. The Drought continued to work in their favor, revealing more caves and hidden caches as water levels dropped further. Each discovery added another piece to the puzzle of Wesley and Aaron's final days. The breakthrough they needed lay in Wesley's damaged camera, still undergoing painstaking analysis in Brisbane. If they could recover its contents, they might finally have concrete evidence linking Mitchell to both the trafficking operation and the murders. But time was working against them. Mitchell's age and deteriorating health meant they needed to move quickly before any chance of justice slipped away. Local indigenous trackers, brought in to assist the investigation, shared stories of changed animal patterns over the decades. They spoke of places where certain species had vanished overnight, of unusual movements in the landscape that violated natural rhythms. Their knowledge helped investigators identify additional sites for examination, each one adding to the growing evidence of systematic wildlife trafficking. Kelly knew they were building towards something unprecedented in Australian wildlife crime. The operation they were uncovering hadn't just claimed human lives. It had potentially impacted entire species populations. The trafficking network's scope suggested connections to powerful interests, both in Australia and abroad. As they prepared to move on Mitchell, the team understood that their case needed to be absolute. They would have one chance to unravel 23 years of criminal enterprise, and justice for Wesley and Aaron hung in the balance. The breakthrough in the Wesley Parker case came from the most delicate of sources, a memory card no larger than a postage stamp, preserved against all odds in his water-damaged camera. For 3 weeks, forensic technicians in Brisbane worked to extract data from the corroded device, using cutting-edge techniques that hadn't existed when the camera was first manufactured. On a Tuesday morning in September 2019, the first images flickered to life on laboratory screens. The footage, though fragmentary, revealed far more than anyone had anticipated. Wesley's final recordings showed systematic wildlife capture operations, rare bilbies and rock wallabies being trapped and loaded into specially modified crates. The camera's microphone had captured voices, including clear commands from a man later identified as Bruce Mitchell. The most damning sequence came from what appeared to be Wesley's last moments of filming. The footage showed Mitchell directing 2 men as they loaded captured animals into a concealed trailer. Wesley's camera work, steady at first, became erratic as he realized the scale of what he was documenting. The final minutes showed him attempting to retreat from his hidden vantage point, but a shadow falling across the lens suggested he had been discovered. Senior Constable Kelly watched the recovered footage dozens of times, noting every detail. Mitchell's face was clearly visible in several frames, his expressions changing from focused concentration to alarm as he apparently spotted Wesley's presence. The footage ended abruptly with sounds of a struggle and Wesley's voice shouting a warning to Aaron. Further analysis of the camera revealed GPS data embedded in the video files, confirming the exact location where Wesley had filmed the trafficking operation. The coordinates matched perfectly with the site where the bodies were later discovered at Bitter Springs. This technological evidence, unavailable in 1996, now provided an irrefutable link between Mitchell, the wildlife operation, and the location of the murders. The recovered footage also documented the sophistication of Mitchell's operation. Custom-built traps, specialized transport containers, and a coordinated team suggested years of refinement. Wildlife crime specialist Dr. James Foster identified at least 7 distinct species in the footage, all highly valued in illegal wildlife markets. Conservative estimates suggested the operation had trafficked thousands of animals over 2 decades. As investigators pieced together the timeline, Wesley's final satellite phone call took on new significance. His mention of unusual animal behavior had likely been a coded warning, an attempt to alert authorities without raising suspicion. The scattered equipment in the Land Cruiser now appeared to be the result of a hasty attempt to hide incriminating evidence rather than an abandoned camp. The footage revealed another crucial detail. Mitchell's trafficking network extended far beyond Australian shores. Documents visible in several frames matched shipping manifests later discovered in raids on suspected trafficking operations in Southeast Asia. The operation wasn't just killing protected species. It was part of a global trade that had devastated native wildlife populations across multiple continents. Kelly's team worked meticulously to document every frame of the recovered video. They matched Mitchell's voice against recent recordings, confirmed the identity of several other individuals visible in the footage, and mapped the entire operation based on visual clues. The evidence painted a picture of a criminal enterprise that had operated with impunity for decades, protected by isolation and Mitchell's careful cultivation of a legitimate ranching facade. The final pieces fell into place when forensic analysts enhanced the audio from Wesley's last recording. Beneath the sounds of struggle, Mitchell's voice could be heard clearly. "No witnesses. Make it look like they got lost." These words, spoken 2 decades earlier, now served as a chilling confirmation of premeditated murder. With the footage secured and analyzed, Kelly knew they had what they needed. The evidence was comprehensive. GPS data, clear visual identification, audio confirmation, and physical evidence from the burial site all pointing to Mitchell's guilt. Wesley Parker's final act of documentation had achieved what he had set out to do: expose a wildlife trafficking operation, though at a terrible cost to himself and Aaron Campbell. The breakthrough transformed a cold case into an airtight prosecution. Mitchell's operation had finally been exposed, laid bare by the very technology he had tried to destroy 23 years earlier. Wesley's camera, meant to document Australia's wildlife, had instead captured evidence of its systematic exploitation, and the brutal lengths some would go to protect their illegal trade. In the crisp dawn of October 2019, police vehicles converged silently on Bruce Mitchell's property. The 72-year-old station manager was found at his desk, calmly reviewing paperwork as if it were any other morning. When Senior Constable Kelly placed him under arrest, he showed no surprise, merely nodding as if he had long anticipated this moment. The prosecution presented an overwhelming case. Wesley Parker's recovered footage served as the centerpiece, his final documentation proving more powerful than any witness testimony. The courtroom fell silent as the videos played, showing not only the sophisticated wildlife trafficking operation, but also capturing Mitchell's voice ordering the disposal of evidence. The GPS data embedded in the footage placed him precisely at the location where the bodies were later discovered. Forensic evidence corroborated every detail. Soil samples from Mitchell's vehicles matched those found with the remains. The unidentified fingerprints from the Land Cruiser, preserved for 23 years, perfectly matched Mitchell's. Analysis of financial records revealed a network of international transactions totaling millions of dollars, all carefully disguised as legitimate agricultural exports. During the trial, the true scope of Mitchell's operation emerged. Over 2 decades, his trafficking network had captured and exported thousands of protected animals. The operation had contributed to significant population declines in several species, particularly the bilby and rock wallaby populations that Wesley had hoped to document. Dr. James Foster's testimony detailed how the sophisticated trapping methods had devastated entire breeding populations. Mitchell maintained his silence throughout the proceedings, speaking only once during sentencing. "They should have minded their own business," he said, his voice carrying no remorse. The judge, citing the premeditated nature of the murders and the devastating environmental impact of the trafficking operation, sentenced him to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The case's resolution brought sweeping changes to wildlife protection in Queensland. New legislation, dubbed the Parker-Campbell Wildlife Protection Act, strengthened penalties for wildlife trafficking and increased resources for conservation enforcement. Remote monitoring systems were installed throughout the Outback, creating a network of surveillance to detect suspicious activities in isolated areas. Wesley's sister established a foundation in her brother's name, dedicated to supporting wildlife documentary filmmakers and conservation efforts. Aaron's wife channeled her grief into advocacy, working with indigenous rangers to protect traditional lands from exploitation. Their deaths, though tragic, had sparked a movement that would protect Australian wildlife for generations to come. The investigation's ripple effects reached far beyond Australian shores. International law enforcement agencies, armed with evidence from Mitchell's operation, launched coordinated strikes against trafficking networks across Southeast Asia. Hundreds of arrests followed, and thousands of animals were rescued from the illegal wildlife trade. Senior Constable Kelly retired the following spring, the case's resolution providing a fitting culmination to her career. During her final press conference, she reflected on the long journey to justice. "Wesley and Aaron died trying to expose the truth," she said. "In the end, they succeeded. Their work continues to protect the creatures they loved." The water hole at Bitter Springs, once a site of darkness and secrets, was transformed into a protected wildlife sanctuary. Indigenous elders performed cleansing ceremonies, reclaiming the space for its original purpose as a haven for native species. The first surveys showed encouraging signs, small populations of bilbies and rock wallabies returning to their ancestral territories. In the years that followed, Wesley's recovered footage found a different purpose than its creator intended. Instead of a nature documentary, it became a powerful teaching tool, shown to law enforcement agencies and conservation groups worldwide as a testament to both the dangers and importance of wildlife protection work. The Queensland Outback remained vast and mysterious, its red horizon still holding countless secrets. But the resolution of Wesley Parker and Aaron Campbell's case had demonstrated that even its most carefully hidden truths could eventually come to light. Their story became part of the landscape itself, a reminder that justice, like water in the desert, might run deep beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge.